1993 to 94 school year, Christmas. That Christmas, something happened that I still find a bit eerie. Very few students stayed at school for Christmas that year. Apart from the trio, there were only 2 lower year students and 1 fifth year. Plus 7 teachers, only 13 people total. Dumbledore made a decision, cancel the 4 house tables, and set up 1 table in the center of the hall that could accommodate everyone. Christmas lunch thus became a warm gathering, where teachers and students ate together. I hid under the table, waiting for someone to drop food. Dumbledore was very lively that day. He personally served food to the students eating with him. He played crackers with everyone. Wizard crackers that exploded with all sorts of strange things. He pulled out a witch's hat decorated with a stuffed vulture from one cracker, identical to the one Neville's grandmother wore, then happily put it on his own head. A wizard, supposedly the greatest, wearing a vulture hat, sitting among a group of students, eating Christmas pudding, with a silly smile on his face. This image I will never forget. About the 13 prophecy. But something else happened that day. Professor Trelawney was late. When she walked into the Great Hall, she looked at the number of people around the table and suddenly became very nervous. She hesitated to sit down. "Dare we risk it, Minerva? My dear, whoever arises first must surely die first." Everyone thought she was talking nonsense. Dumbledore stood up with a smile to greet her, pulling out a chair for her. He was the first to stand. No one paid attention to this at the time. Professor Trelawney claimed to be a seer, but most of her prophecies were nonsense. No one took her words seriously. But later, many years later, Dumbledore truly was the first of that table to die. He died on June 30th, 1997, falling from Hogwarts' Astronomy Tower. I don't know if this was coincidence or if Professor Trelawney really saw something, but this made me realize something. Fate is a very strange thing. Sometimes, a casually spoken sentence becomes reality many years later. Sometimes, an offhand choice determines a person's life or death. Dumbledore chose to be the first to stand that day. He was probably just being polite. He probably didn't take Trelawney's words seriously at all. But that choice, somehow, made me feel. He seemed to already know he would die. He seemed to be mocking fate in his own way. You say the first to rise will be the first to die? Fine, then I'll be the first to rise. That was Dumbledore. A person who dared to mock fate. About Buckbeak. Something else happened that year. A hippogriff named Buckbeak was sentenced to death because it had injured a student named Draco Malfoy. On the evening of the execution, Dumbledore went to Hagrid's hut with 2 ministry officials. But Buckbeak escaped. Just as the executioner was about to act, Buckbeak disappeared. Dumbledore acted very surprised. "How extraordinary! Where has she gone?" he said. But his tone revealed undisguised delight. Later, I learned what happened. Harry and Hermione used a time turner to go back in time and save Buckbeak. And Dumbledore. He knew from the beginning. He hinted to Hermione that she could do this. He gave her enough clues. He let her figure it out herself. He didn't directly tell her, use the time turner to save Buckbeak. He just said some seemingly unrelated things, then waited for Hermione to connect the dots herself. This was Dumbledore's way of doing things. He wouldn't give you the answer directly. He would give you clues and let you find the answer yourself. Sometimes this is wisdom. Sometimes this is cruelty. Sometimes I can't tell the difference between the two. 1994 to 95 school year. Opening feast. That year's opening feast, Dumbledore's outfit was as eye-catching as ever. He wore very magnificent deep green robes embroidered with sparkling stars and moons. I hid in a corner of the Great Hall, staring at his robes for a long time. Those stars and moons moved. They slowly rotated on the robes, like real celestial bodies. I don't know what kind of magic this was, but I thought, it looked pretty good. Although as a cat, I've never been particularly interested in human aesthetics. After the sorting ceremony, came the opening speech. Last year, Dumbledore said 4 words: nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak. How many words did he say this year? Tuck in. Then he sat down. The tables immediately filled with delicious food. I think Dumbledore was conducting some kind of challenge, seeing how short he could make the opening speech. Maybe next year he'd only say 1 word. Maybe the year after he'd just remain silent. Who knows? About the Triwizard Tournament and the interrupted joke. That year, Hogwarts hosted the Triwizard Tournament. This was a very dangerous competition that had been cancelled for over a century because too many people had died. When Dumbledore announced this news, one of the red-haired twins, Fred Weasley, loudly asked if the headmaster was joking. Hearing this, Dumbledore actually got sidetracked. He started telling a joke. A troll, a hag, and a leprechaun walk into a bar. Then Professor McGonagall beside him coughed lightly. Only then did Dumbledore reluctantly return to the topic. We'll never know how that joke ended. but I'd bet it was a very dry joke. Dumbledore's sense of humor, how should I put it? Very unique. Not everyone can appreciate it. About the room of requirement. At the Christmas feast, Dumbledore told a story while chatting with another headmaster, Karkaroff. He said that this morning on his way to the bathroom he'd taken a wrong turn and accidentally found a room full of exquisite and gorgeous chamber pots, but when he tried to go back, he couldn't find it again. Later I learned. That room was the room of requirement. The room of requirement becomes whatever the user needs most, and when not needed, it hides itself. When Dumbledore wanted to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, the room of requirement became a room full of chamber pots. This might be the most humorous use of the room of requirement in the entire series. A great wizard, a legendary figure who defeated Grindelwald, got lost in the Hogwarts corridors at dawn and accidentally discovered a mysterious room filled with chamber pots. I think this story perfectly encapsulates Dumbledore as a person. He's very powerful, but he also gets lost. He's very wise, but he also needs to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. He's a wizard, but he's also a person. About the twins' beards. That year there was another amusing episode. Fred and George Weasley tried to use aging potion to fool the age line around the Goblet of Fire, wanting to enter the Triwizard Tournament. The result? They both grew long white beards. In the movie, they wrestled with each other. Very chaotic. But the book wasn't like that. In the book, they were laughing at each other's ridiculous appearance. Dumbledore, passing by, was also amused. He even complimented the twins' beards as quite impressive, very becoming. I hid in a corner watching this scene, thinking, this old guy really likes these twins. He likes their rebellion, their creativity, their rule-breaking. Maybe because they remind him of his younger self. Maybe because he simply finds them interesting. Either way, Dumbledore never truly punished the Weasley twins. He just smiled, watched them cause trouble, then gently shook his head. Like a grandfather watching his grandchildren make mischief. About the Goblet of Fire incident. That year, something big happened. Harry Potter's name flew out of the Goblet of Fire. Even though he was only 14, even though he hadn't entered the tournament, even though he was obviously being framed, he still became the 4th champion of the Triwizard Tournament. In the movie, Dumbledore rushed at Harry, angrily demanding if he'd put his name in the goblet. This was one of the most criticized, out-of-character scenes in the movie version, because the book wasn't like that at all. In the book, Dumbledore was very calm. He just steadily asked Harry if he had put his name in the goblet. His tone was inquiring, not accusatory. He believed Harry. He just needed confirmation. The air in that room was very tense. I could feel it, even though I was just hiding in the shadows outside the door. The adults were hiding something. They knew things Harry didn't know. And Dumbledore. The way he looked at Harry was complex. Not anger, not suspicion. Something else. Like someone looking at something he'd long expected but still didn't want to face. Though in the book, Dumbledore did yell at someone. Snape. Because Snape was being sarcastic on the sidelines, saying things like, Potter has always enjoyed breaking rules. Dumbledore turned his head and told Snape to be quiet in a stern tone I'd never heard before. At that moment, I realized Dumbledore's protection of Harry was real. He wouldn't allow anyone to attack Harry at this moment, even if that person was one of his most trusted, about defending Hagrid. That year, the Daily Prophet exposed Hagrid's giant blood. Hagrid was a half-giant. His mother was a giantess. In the wizarding world, giants were seen as dangerous, savage creatures. Having giant blood was a very shameful thing. Hagrid wanted to resign. Dumbledore firmly refused. He not only refused Hagrid's resignation, but insisted that Hagrid must have breakfast with him the next day. Harry, Ron, and Hermione also pleaded with Hagrid in his hut to come back to teaching, moving Hagrid to tears. This scene in the book was really very warm and touching. Dumbledore conjured hot tea and cakes for everyone. When Harry excitedly swore, he pretended to fiddle with his fingers and didn't hear. Finally, under everyone's persuasion, Hagrid, this half-giant who had once been as lonely as Harry and had now become everyone's good friend, finally smiled. This scene showed me another side of Dumbledore. He wasn't just a headmaster, not just a wizard. He was an old man who would conjure hot tea for friends. He was an elder who would pretend not to hear curse words. He was someone who would be there for friends at their lowest moments. About the break with Fudge. After the Triwizard Tournament ended, something very important happened. Cedric Diggory died. Voldemort returned. Harry witnessed it all, barely escaping alive from the graveyard. But Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge refused to believe it. He refused to accept the fact that Voldemort had returned. He refused to listen to Harry's testimony. He refused to believe Dumbledore. Worse, Fudge brought Dementors into the castle without Dumbledore's permission, and subjected the only witness, Barty Crouch Jr., to the Dementor's kiss, stripping him of his soul. The evidence was gone. The witness was gone. News of Voldemort's return was covered up. Dumbledore and Fudge had a huge argument in the headmaster's office. I was hiding in a corner of the office at the time. Don't ask how I got in. I have my ways. I witnessed that argument firsthand. The air that night smelled terrible. Not literally terrible, but the kind of smell that makes cats want to run away. The smell of fear, the smell of lies, two adults saying things the other didn't want to hear. Dumbledore was usually smiling, but that night his face was very serious. He told Fudge that if the Ministry didn't take action, Voldemort would become stronger and stronger. But Fudge wouldn't listen. He didn't want to believe Voldemort had returned because that would plunge his political career into crisis. He chose to bury his head in the sand. I don't understand. As a cat, if there is danger, we run or fight. We don't pretend the danger doesn't exist. But humans do. Humans will, for reasons I can't understand, power, face, fear, choose to close their eyes. Fudge was that kind of human. In the end, Fudge left in anger. From that day on, the Ministry and Dumbledore parted ways. Dumbledore became the enemy, a lying old madman, a conspirator trying to seize Ministry power. This is politics. About reforming the Order. After Fudge left, Dumbledore immediately began to act. He asked Arthur Weasley, Sirius, Hagrid, and others to gather allies from all sectors, preparing to fight Voldemort. The reformation of the Order of the Phoenix began. The Order of the Phoenix was a secret organization Dumbledore created during the First Wizarding War. Now it was being jawsy again. Dumbledore didn't wait for Ministry permission. He didn't wait for official recognition. He made the decision himself, then began to act. This was Dumbledore. He never relied on others. He always made his own decisions. Sometimes this is leadership. Sometimes this is arrogance. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two. About the end-of-term feast speech. That year's end-of-term feast, the Great Hall's decorations weren't the usual house colors. They were black. In memory of Cedric Diggory, Dumbledore stood up, led a toast, and paid tribute to Cedric as if mourning a hero. Then he did something very brave. He solemnly told all the students, Cedric was murdered by Voldemort. The Dark Lord had returned. Even though the Ministry refused to acknowledge it, Dumbledore chose to let the students know the truth. He also expressed his highest respect for Harry, who had bravely faced Voldemort. That night, the Great Hall was very quiet. Students were all digesting this terrible news. Some were afraid, some were angry, some were crying. But Dumbledore stood there, like an anchor. His presence made people feel safe. As long as he was still there, things wouldn't get too bad. At least that's what I thought at the time. 1995 to 96 school year. That year was one of the darkest. The Ministry sent a woman named Dolores Umbridge to Hogwarts. She became the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, then became the Hogwarts High Inquisitor, and finally even tried to replace Dumbledore as headmaster. I really hated her. Not because she wore pink clothes, and not because of her fake sweet tone when speaking, but because of how she smelled. Some humans smell like food, some smell like stones in the sun. She smelled like rotten candy, sweet to the point of nausea, sweet enough to make you sick. Her way of treating students also made me uncomfortable. She used something called a blood quill to punish students. This pen used the students' own blood as ink, carving what they wrote onto the backs of their hands. This was torture. Did Dumbledore know about this? I'm not sure. But I know he did many things that year to oppose Umbridge. About appointing Firenze. When Umbridge tried to drive Professor Trelawney out of the school, Dumbledore immediately intervened. He pointed out that while Umbridge had the right to fire professors, she had no right to expel her from Hogwarts. The right to arrange staff housing belonged to the headmaster. Then he did something even better. He appointed a new divination professor before Umbridge could. The centaur Firenze, the very centaur who had saved Harry in the Forbidden Forest 4 years earlier. Umbridge extremely despised half-human creatures, and Dumbledore appointing a centaur as professor was obviously meant to annoy her. The book mentioned that when Dumbledore announced this appointment, he kept grinning, not hiding his pleasure at all. I was hiding nearby at the time and saw his expression. It was an, I know this will upset you, and I'm enjoying it expression. Dumbledore could be very merciful, but he could also be very mischievous. When he decided to oppose someone, he would use an elegant, subtle way to make them very uncomfortable. About the office battle. That year's most spectacular moment happened after Dumbledore's army was discovered. Umbridge discovered students were secretly practicing defensive magic. Minister Fudge personally brought Aurors to arrest Dumbledore. What did Dumbledore do? He took all the blame. That's right. Yes, I asked Harry to form an army in my name. I've been plotting to overthrow the Ministry. That's the kind of person I am. That's my nature. Fudge said they'd arrest Dumbledore then. Dumbledore calmly warned them. Don't push me. Fudge didn't believe him and ordered the Aurors to act. Then, I was hiding behind a bookshelf in the office at the time. Don't ask why I'm always in these places. I witnessed the whole thing. But, honestly, I didn't see clearly. Too fast. I only remember a flash. Then a loud noise. Then the sound of humans falling. By the time I poked my head out from behind the bookshelf, Fudge, Umbridge, Kingsley, Dawlish, 5 people were all lying on the ground. The office was smashed to pieces. And Dumbledore stood there, his robes not even disheveled. The expression on his face. Not anger, not pride, something very calm, like the eye of a storm. At that moment, my instinct told me, this is not where a cat should be. This old man wasn't just a candy-loving headmaster. He was something else. Something I couldn't understand. Ancient, powerful. Before leaving, he didn't forget to urge Harry to study occlumency properly. This was also the first time in the entire book that Dumbledore spoke properly to Harry. Before this, throughout the entire school year, he had deliberately avoided contact with Harry. Later I learned why. He was afraid Voldemort would spy on him through Harry's thoughts. So he chose to distance himself from Harry. This choice, was it right? I don't know, but I know Harry lost a lot because of it, including his godfather Sirius. About the office being inaccessible. After Dumbledore left, the headmaster's office automatically locked itself. Although Umbridge was appointed as the new headmaster, she couldn't enter the headmaster's office no matter what. She tried every method, all useless. The office door just wouldn't open. From this, I drew a conclusion. Truly becoming Hogwarts headmaster doesn't depend on the Board of Governors or Ministry decrees, but requires the school itself to recognize you. Umbridge was only a headmaster in name. Hogwarts didn't recognize her. This castle has a soul. It knows who the real headmaster is and who's just a fraud. As a cat living in this castle, I felt a strange pride about this. About the battle at the Ministry. At the end of that school year, a battle took place. The location was the Department of Mysteries at the Ministry. The combatants were Dumbledore and Voldemort. I didn't witness that battle firsthand. I'm just a cat, I couldn't run to the Ministry. But I later heard details of that battle from various sources. In the movie, the two seemed evenly matched, but the book wasn't like that. In the book, Dumbledore completely dominated Voldemort. The description I heard was this. The battle was short. Dumbledore struck very quickly, so fast that Voldemort barely had a chance to fight back. He used statues in the Ministry atrium to protect Harry and trap Bellatrix. He trapped Voldemort with flames. He surrounded Voldemort with water, nearly drowning him. And Voldemort? He only had two moves, Apparition and the Killing Curse. Curse after curse of Avada Kedavra, all dodged or blocked by Dumbledore. Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, even used his own body to block a killing curse, then was reborn. That wasn't an evenly matched battle. That was domination. An old man using wisdom and skill, beating a wizard known as the most powerful dark wizard in history without giving him a chance to fight back. I thought about it for a long time afterward. Dumbledore was so strong, why didn't he just kill Voldemort? Later, I learned the answer. Because Voldemort had Horcruxes. He had torn his soul into pieces and hidden them in various objects. As long as the Horcruxes existed, Voldemort wouldn't truly die. Dumbledore knew this. So it wasn't that he didn't want to kill Voldemort. He couldn't kill him. At least, not until the Horcruxes were destroyed. About Harry being possessed. There was a moment in that battle that impressed me. When Voldemort possessed Harry, Dumbledore's expression changed. Throughout the whole thing, he'd been very relaxed, very composed. But at that moment, he was afraid. He wasn't afraid of Voldemort. He was afraid Harry would be hurt. At that moment, I saw Dumbledore's vulnerable side. He could face the Ministry alone. He could dominate Voldemort alone, but he couldn't watch Harry get hurt. This old man's feelings for this child were much deeper than he showed. About the long talk after the battle. After the battle, Dumbledore returned to the headmaster's office and had a very long conversation with Harry. It was one of the most important conversations in the entire series. Dumbledore admitted many of his mistakes. He shouldn't have distanced himself from Harry. He admitted he shouldn't have avoided Harry out of fear of Voldemort spying. He shouldn't have let Snape teach Harry. He admitted he shouldn't have ignored Snape's hatred of Harry and stubbornly insisted Snape teach Harry occlumency. He shouldn't have hidden the prophecy. What he felt most sorry about was that he'd known the prophecy's content all along, knew that either Harry or Voldemort must die, but couldn't bear to tell Harry these cruel truths during his already thorny upbringing. In this chapter of the book, Dumbledore was truly in tears. He was no longer a headmaster who remained unmoved, even as the sky fell. He was just an old man full of regret. In the movie, Harry seemed quite calm in the office. But in the book, Harry was very angry. Every time Dumbledore looked at Harry, Harry thought Dumbledore was blaming him, so he furiously smashed many things. And the portrait of Phineas Black in the office, upon hearing of Sirius's death, also panicked and left the frame, as if unwilling to believe it, needing to go to Black Manor to confirm the news. That night, the entire headmaster's office was filled with the scent of sorrow. I hid in a corner, watching it all. I saw Dumbledore's tears. I saw Harry's anger. I saw the invisible rift between the two. As a cat, I didn't know how to judge all this. Did Dumbledore do wrong? Maybe. Did he have better choices? I don't know. I only know that after that night, something changed. Dumbledore was no longer that omnipotent old wizard. He was just an old man who made mistakes. An old man carrying too many secrets. An old man slowly walking toward death. About blood protection. In that conversation, Dumbledore told Harry for the first time why he had to return to Privet Drive every year. 15 years ago, Lily's sacrifice created blood protection on Harry. Dumbledore used this to place protective magic on number 4, Privet Drive. As long as Harry returned once a year, as long as he could call his aunt's house home, This blood protection would continue to exist, and Voldemort couldn't hurt him there. This is why Dumbledore left baby Harry on the Dursleys' doorstep. This is why Harry had to go back every year and endure those abusive relatives. This was protection, and also imprisonment. Dumbledore knew the Dursleys treated Harry badly. He knew Harry suffered there, but he still made that choice. Because in his view, being alive was more important than being happy. This choice, was it right? As a cat, I don't know, but I know this choice made Dumbledore carry a lot of guilt. Many of his actions toward Harry, sending the photo album, pretending not to see tears, giving Neville 10 points so Gryffindor could win the House Cup, were probably all attempts to compensate for something. Alright, I need to catch my breath here. From 1981 to 96, I followed this old man for 15 years. In those 15 years, I saw many things. I saw him steal the light from street lamps on a midnight street. I saw him say 4 baffling words at the opening feast. I saw him conduct a funeral march for the twins. I saw him lie in front of a mirror. I saw him protect student after student. I saw him break with the Ministry. I saw him defeat 5 Aurors alone. I saw him dominate Voldemort. I saw him cry in his office. This old man, what kind of person is he? As a cat, I try to summarize in ways a cat can understand. First, he's a cat with strong territorial instincts. He sees Hogwarts as his territory, the students as residents of his territory. Anyone trying to hurt them, whether Voldemort or the Ministry, he'll fight back without mercy. Second, he's a cat who likes to be alone. He rarely tells others what he's thinking. He always makes decisions alone, bears consequences alone. He doesn't like explaining, doesn't like consulting, doesn't like letting others participate in his plans. Third, he's a cat who hides his wounds. His wounds are hidden under woolen socks, hidden under jokes, hidden under lemon drops. He doesn't let anyone see his weakness, his guilt, his fear. Fourth, he's a cat who licks others' wounds. Even though his own wounds are buried deep, he's very good at discovering others' wounds and comforting them in subtle ways. Like pretending to look at birds outside the window. Like sending a photo album. Like giving 10 points to a clumsy boy. Fifth, he's a cat I can't understand. I've observed him for 15 years, and I still haven't completely figured him out. He's too complex. He's like an onion, peel one layer and there's another. He's like a mirror, you always see what you want to see. He's like a fog, you think you've seen clearly, walk closer, and there's nothing. But there's one thing I'm certain of. This old man, in the coming year, will do things that surprise everyone. He'll discover terrible secrets. He'll suffer fatal injuries. He'll make final arrangements. Then he'll die, falling from Hogwarts' highest point, the Astronomy Tower. And the person who kills him will be one of the people he trusts most. This is a story about trust, betrayal, sacrifice, and love. This is the last year of Albus Dumbledore's life, and also my last year observing him. Let me finish this story in the next part.